All right. Good morning. So I'm recording this piece in addition to what I've already recorded, which I'll put at the end. But this is just going to be a little bit of a ramble on about obviously some of the emotional and spiritual implications for 2022. So I want to spend a second before I get into some of the astrological things and some of, what I said in my next recording. I wanted to talk about what's going on with the frequency change and the sun and some of the plasma discharges that we're receiving. As much as I've kind of distanced myself from, the word ascension or whatever, I really enjoy the word evolution. I love the word ascension, like kind of going within yourself and like pulling your spirit into your body, like embodiment. Like these are terms that I've come to favor more than ascension. But there's something, unmistakable that's happening with me, with several other people that I know. And so, there are a couple of different components to that, right? Like, this is just my perception of it. Last year, and this is 2021 right now, so I'm talking about 2020, like at the very beginning of the year, I felt like I had a huge veil that was lifted. And it was almost like it was lifted both inside of my head and also outside, like in the realm. It was like there were two different, or maybe they were the same type of overlay. I don't know, but I just feel that there's so much more access to maybe what's been hidden inside of our genetics that we don't know what that could be. So I've been studying Steiner for the last, I guess, gosh, like 18 months now. Okay, so the reason that I was bringing up Rudolf Steiner was because I wanted to talk about how he viewed genetics and blood and things like that, and kind of how it connects in with today. So, Rudolf Steiner is an anthroposophical mystic, and it's kind of like a spiritual science is how he wanted it to be remembered, like more objective, a little bit less floofy, but he saw the body and the blood and the heart as very different from, maybe like more materialist, like Western medicine practitioners, and believes that believes that our divinity and our like access to, other spaces, other times, other whole other world perhaps is in our blood, is in our cells, is in our DNA. And so several years ago, the Times magazine came out with an article that was talking about VMAT2 gene. And I've looked into this a lot, and it was kind of like it was being actually promoted as the God gene in this article on the front page of Time magazine. And I think that there's definitely something to that, though. When you go looking on the internet for VMAT2 gene, the first 5 pages that you're going to come up with are religious, like the religiosity gene, or like it. And so, it kind of brings back what Steiner said about the Ahrimanic influence and how it's very like extremely materialist. So everything that isn't seen as materialist is kind of villainized or scrutinized or considered to be, like superstition or Magical thinking is a good one that I've heard recently, but there are ways that we can use this energy that is coming out of the sun. Well, and that's a whole other conversation, right? Because it's like, for me, I don't necessarily view the sun as like a sun. I view it as like something, I don't know this for sure. This is just how I see it. Feels like something's coming through it. It also looks like an LED light to me sometimes. I can't even lie about that. But like whatever is going on with it, there's something that is happening in the atmosphere. And me noticing this is what got me on to watching like Suspicious Observers and learning about like the more 3D science aspect of this with solar flares, solar winds, coronal mass ejections and emits and stuff like that. I think that that does have very much an impression on us, like arguably it could bring back memory, or it could reawaken dormant abilities that exist within our genes and within our bones. And so to me, like knowing that that's happening and knowing like the sickness that kind of pervades our world today, no offense to, I don't know, anyone who that could possibly offend, but it's like I think that it makes sense why all the spraying and why all the genetic sort of fuckery and tampering that's been going on for years. And maybe there's a new level of it now, but I think that really like there's this like this potential I think that we have through this plasmic discharge that I don't think personally that whoever they are, can stop. And I think that it has to do more with like our abilities coming online, like in the way that they are supposed to, the way that they are originally intended to, in spite of the fuckery. Like I think that we could even outdo the fuckery. Like, so I've had a couple of like interesting visions, and I really like don't like to give too much credence because it could be anything, right? Like our minds are amazing. And so, but I have had visions of myself literally like doing really interesting things in the future, like walking through walls, just kind of having this like instinctual memory of how to do that under stress, right? And then just doing it. And I don't know, like if that never comes to pass in this body and in this life, like I will not be disappointed. And but it's just like a fun thought to kind of twirl around on. Like you see people who, get hit by a car full speed ahead and they keep running or they keep walking. And usually it is in times of stress when those, instinctual sort of spiritually protective genes maybe have a chance to express themselves. So that's all that I wanted to say. I think just in that, like, hopefully you can find a quiet space in the morning or in the evening or wherever to kind of take some time to pour energy into this, like the solar flares too, and the solar winds and this and that. As somebody who is sensitive to it, fuck, like I will be so wiped out some days, and so it's just really good, I think, at this point to have like a water filtration system so that you can hydrate and hydrate and hydrate electrolytes. Like there's some supplements that help with the solar, with the neutrinos and the plasma discharges. And I think that maybe selenium, but obviously you want to do your own research on that. And yeah, this is just the first part, and then I'll get into the astrology that I recorded yesterday. But this is just me grazing the surface, because 2022 is like several years within a year, just my opinion. It's going to be pretty epic, I think. But yeah, okay. Enjoy the rest of this. the South Node moving into Scorpio is going to bring up a lot of stuff, a lot of, I think in the world, this can create kind of a harsher climate potentially. With the South Node in Scorpio, it kind of brings up that Gotham type vibe. And it's kind of like there's an underworldish component with Scorpio. And I think that because of the way that like people acted with the South Node in Sagittarius, when the South Node comes into a sign, you are supposed to release the stuff of that sign. You are not supposed to hold on to it like people have. So Sagittarius is religions, faiths, like listening to the priest kind of. And, I feel that like a lot of people, in my opinion, got pretty deeply ensnared into this new religion, this new belief system, right? And, I think that with, the South Node moving into Scorpio, the snare is to be so embroiled and so deep in your trauma and your victimhood that you literally like sabotage everything in your life. And I think that like, based on the way, like I said, that people handled the South Node in Sag transit and are still handling it, frankly, I would say that that's probably, people going a little nuts, like a little bit more nuts than normal. So 2022 is a year where like if you have an addiction or if you have something eating at you, like you're going to want to address whatever that is, and there's a lot of like very escapist, illusory type transits coming up in 2022, specifically like Jupiter's transit through Pisces, conjoining Neptune in April. On April, I believe 9th through the 12th is when they conjoin, and so this is several things. Like there's a very, very high level, like mystical thread that you can definitely like hop onto and start contributing to that exists, and it's very, very present with Jupiter in Pisces. It's like, obviously with the way that things are in the world, there's doors that are closing for some people, right? But there's windows that are opening. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is like, the way that you find new pathways of opportunity, of enjoyment, is through that sort of like spiritual curiosity, I believe, until May, which is when Jupiter moves into Aries, a resurgence of individualism. Okay, so so with Jupiter and Neptune, especially as they come closer together, like March, April, we are going to want to have discernment of what we are presented with, like there's a lot of obfuscation and a lot of deception and a lot of bullshittery, but I think that, it's like, how does an abusive parent hold on to or like continue to control like an adult child, right? They occasionally show their good side. They do something nice, And so I think that like any nice things that the ruling predatory class presents to us, I think that, we should look twice at, 3 times at, 4 times at. We should be allowed to do that publicly. It's crazy to me that I live in a society where I actually feel unsafe because I disagree with authority, or have felt that way. I don't necessarily feel that way anymore, but yeah, so I think that like that 2022, especially like in those March and April, is just going to be like a really good time to hone our discernment. I think the propaganda machine is going to go brr like the first part of the year, right? And that's to be expected. That shit never shuts off. But I think that I don't know. I think that there could be something space related or something like something that pulls us off of something that we need to be focused on, or there's some type of distraction, confusion type deception energy in March and April. Though I think for us personally, if we're walking in alignment with our spirit, then this could be like one of the most amazing magical times too, you know. I think it just depends on like what we're contracted for as a soul, but also like where we're at spiritually, which is why I think I felt such a like tap on the shoulder to really fucking shore that up in the last 2 years. So I'm excited for 2022 personally, because I think that I don't know, I think that it'll be an interesting year. I just heard something. Maybe I'll have an EVP on the recording. Okay, so yeah, discernment is how we're going to walk through that transit, and also just like being so incredibly in step with ourselves and with our spirit and with trusting ourselves, you know. I think that for people who want to connect with nature this year, and I mean in a genuine way, I don't necessarily mean in like in a climate change way, in a genuine way. I just believe that nature offers protection, however it does, you know, to people who protect her, you know. That's just my opinion. So I also believe that the universe loves variety and the unexpected and the spontaneous. So I try to leave space for that in my life, and will be doing that in 2022, because I think that the amount of personal twists and turns into something that's potentially amazing is definitely there. It's a year where you want to focus on the cleanliness of your energy field, you know. Obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious to everybody, but it's obvious to me. There's been an increased level of things along the line. There's more like out there stuff, psychic attack, entity attachment, you know, electric kind of, you know, high strangeness, you know. And I recorded a webinar for addressing and dealing with spiritual warfare. And my teacher, Kimberly McGeorge, is an amazing resource, as is my friend Shane, who just started doing personal sessions with people. So if you're dealing with the high strange this year, you'll have plenty of assistance. And, you know, it's not easy, and we all have to figure out how to deal with that for ourselves, I think, you know, as like that type of thing becomes more noticeable for people who have the capacity to notice it. So yeah. And I actually think that in 2022, like full scale possessions will be much more common, you know, where, and I mean, this is kind of dark, but this is why you want to make sure that you're with the right people, you know, is because, you know, you can kind of see when something else comes over someone. And, you know, I think that that could be something that shows up a lot in 2022, but not if you're with the right people. And so a strategy for dealing with this, if I see something come over someone, is I address it directly. You know, and I've gotten really used to saying, to people, like, stop handling me, you know? Ultimately, if you are like in any way trying to control what other people's process is or what other people are going to do, like, this is not going to be a good year for you. So if you are trying to insist that everybody handle a problem in one way, if you are trying to enforce or force certain edicts on your fellow citizens, like, I'm just going to say it, I think this is not going to be a good year for you. So this is not the year to try to control anyone else's process at all. And I think that that's a very like slippery slope, dangerous territory. Stay in your own lane this year. Focus on your own life and building something for yourself rather than, obsessing about these narratives. This is the year, I think, where a lot of us, people like me, pull what we know back in. And, I think that some of that has to do with the South Node moving through Scorpio. But yeah, so really beautiful, powerful, mystical threads and huge like chances to realize empowerment. And I think that when Jupiter moves back into Aries, or moves into Aries, I should say, May 11th, which it will be in Aries until pretty much like, I believe, November or December. It's crazy. And so Jupiter in Aries is like this, it's kind of got the energy of war to it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat, but it also has this like resurgence of the individual. Like, I think whatever happens in the Pluto return of the US, February and March, I think that here in the States, there could be a very considerable like response in the all the way individualistic direction. This can sometimes be toxic, obviously. I think that when people think about like individualism, they think about someone saying like me and my needs first, and only that which I need, But I think that that the individualism that we need, in my opinion, is a self-awareness and a willingness to work on one's self. Because like I've been saying since 2020, if you are foisting your energy onto an enemy that has been prescribed for you, then you're not you're not healing, you're not looking inside of yourself. And we cannot have a, utopian collective or any kind of like collectivist society that is good without first looking inward and healing ourselves and deciding, this is an individualist collective is the only kind of collective that I want to be a part of, where other people's ideas are encouraged and supported and you're allowed to, but I'm not trying to go join the hive mind. And that is another thing that I do think that we could see more of this year, unfortunately, is that sort of hive mind energy. Notice that people are like repeating like the same, sort of like clips from the news. It's for your safety, for the greater good, that kind of thing, right? And I think that that kind of thing could increase as well this year, like that sort of like puppeting like the official narrative, because, unfortunately, I don't know if I think that this is only assisted and aided by the juice that's going into people. But I know that like we pretty much all have like some types of metal in our brains and in our bodies, right? So that's why I'm saying like this year is a year to have like just this like incredible discernment of what is not you. Because I think that the tech interface is going to become a little bit stronger. So I know that that's like, I know I feel bad like putting this out, but at the same time, it's like, people gotta know, and it's like this same technology that has been harming us for the last year, frankly, is probably going to be shown in 2022 to start to begin to heal us, to rewrite genes, to write out cancer, to write out this or to write out that, and that's great for people who want to go in that direction. I just think that what you are giving up with merging with technology physically is your own mind, is your own emotions, is your own sense of spiritual sovereignty. That's kind of what I perceive anyway, that like when you interface with tech somehow. So, that's the thing. We all have a lot of technology within us already. We all have nanobots inside of us already. So, I think I've spent the last year, and I talked about this in 2021's forecast of like, get your body cleaned out of metals, because that like reduces this interplay that the metals in our body and the technology have with each other. What people choose is really up to them, but I think we could see that transhumanism type stuff and the more augmented reality, the more virtual reality, cybernetic enhancements, these types of miraculous innovations, that have been probably waiting in the wings since I was a child. It's like, anyway. So this is why I'm kind of like, okay, like increased level of possessions, meaning like people are not themselves anymore. Some of them, not all of them, just some people. And you'll feel it out. It's case by case. Every situation is different, but I think that that increases the need that you might feel and that you might have to be conscious of yourself, of your surroundings, just a little bit more lucid in your getting goings and going arounds and stuff. But yeah, so I think that like I've pretty much said everything that I want to say about this year. I think at the end of the year when Mars stations retrograde, and let me look and see when that is, because I want to talk about that specifically with the mental piece, but I think that that will also be helpful to talk about. All right, so Mars stations retrograde on October 30th in it's not in Gemini, is it? Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. So it's in Gemini, right? So that's gonna fucking like go back over all of the stuff that, and it stays retrograde, I believe, until, yeah. Until January of 2023. Okay, so but Mars in retrograde is going to go over all the stuff that we just went through with the North Node in Gemini and Sag. That's insane. I'm excited for next year. There's also a Venus retrograde at the end of next year. And there's other transits, but I think the majority of like what I really wanted to get out there and say today is number one, discernment, consciousness, lucidity, whatever that is for you. And I struggle with that too. I'm not saying that like by saying these things, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at doing any of these things. That's not at all what I'm saying. That's not the case, but it'll be good to like take some time away from our devices to continue to clear our bodies of metals, but also to cultivate really strong relationships this year, both local and abroad. That will be very much an energy that is present and available. And let's see what else. Oh, and then to heal your shit, like really with the with the South Node moving into Scorpio, this is the time to heal your shit. Otherwise, your shit will be used against you. And I mean that in like the nicest, most above board possible way. Like, I mean, we can see it's already happening right now, like with people's compassion and empathy being used against them. I do think that that's a potential for 2022 as well as it has been 2021 and 2020, you know. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this talk. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back soon with a physical and mental sort of quote unquote predictions set for 2022, even though I don't really believe in predictions or that word. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention about the US Pluto return, and that is that the opposite sign of Capricorn is Cancer. And Cancer has to do with our roots, our traditions, our ancestry, our cultures, our lands, that kind of thing. A lot of people in this country, you know, and I kind of look at this as like very like broad, like social and cultural engineering, that a lot of people here have been removed from their lands and have been put here, you know. So basically, like if you want to brainwash a culture, separate them from their roots, separate them from their traditions, mystical traditions. And I believe society structure today has successfully done that. You know, this past year in 2021, I spent a lot of, well, not a lot of time, but more time than I've spent before, and hopefully more to come in 2022, sitting with somebody who does ancestry. And so I've been putting together a lot of different pieces. And I've also have been resonating more with like Western esotericism, you know, the last few years. And, you know, kind of looking into my ancestry, like there's very much like a straight line as a reason for why I've been resonating with those systems and traditions. So anyway, I just wanted to say that connect with your roots, connect with your heart this year. And that will help us get through the Pluto return emotionally and spiritually. Thank you. Bye.